Story 1. Shadows on the Slopes. The winter air bit at my exposed cheeks as I stood at the edge of the Airbnb's sprawling deck, gazing out over the snow-draped Colorado countryside. My first real skiing trip was supposed to be a grand adventure, a week of laughter and bonding with my friends Angel, Amy, and Jessica. We had flown into Denver, our spirits high, and driven through winding mountain roads to Snowmass, a quaint town nestled beside the towering Aspen Mountain ski resort. The 4-bedroom house we rented was a dream: rustic wooden beams, a roaring fireplace, and a hot tub that promised to soothe our aching muscles after long days on the slopes. But what began as a carefree getaway soon spiraled into a nightmare that would haunt me for years. I was a novice snowboarder, my experience limited to a single day spent tumbling down a bunny hill back home. The first morning, we Ubered to the resort, the anticipation buzzing between us like static electricity. The mountain was quieter than expected for a Thursday, the slopes dotted with only a handful of skiers carving graceful arcs through the powder. My friends, far more experienced, took to the intermediate runs with ease, their laughter echoing as they disappeared down the trails. I, however, struggled. Each attempt to navigate the blue runs, longer and steeper than the beginner slopes, ended with me sprawled in the snow, my board betraying me at every turn. Frustration gnawed at me, and by midday I was exhausted, my confidence battered. It was during one of these defeated moments, as I sat panting on the side of a slope, that I first noticed him. A man, perhaps in his 30s, clad in a worn black ski jacket, approached me. His movements were awkward, his snowboard wobbling beneath him as if he too was out of his depth. "You okay?" he asked, his voice muffled by a scarf. I nodded, brushing off his concern, but he lingered, attempting small talk about the weather and the mountain. Something about his persistence felt off, like an itch I couldn't scratch. I mumbled a polite excuse, strapped my board back on, and pushed off, eager to put distance between us. The next day, the mountain was busier, the weekend crowd transforming the resort into a bustling hive. My struggles continued, each fall more humiliating than the last. I stopped again, halfway down a blue run, my breath fogging in the crisp air. To my dismay, the man from the day before appeared again, inching toward me with that same unsteady gait. He unstrapped his board and sat a few feet away, his eyes glinting with an unsettling intensity. "Not used to seeing so many pretty girls out here," he said, his voice low and deliberate. My stomach churned. I was bundled in a ski mask and helmet, my face barely visible. How could he possibly know what I looked like? Alarm bells rang in my head. I lied, saying I was with my boyfriend. "He saw you come with all girls," he replied, a smirk tugging at his lips. Revulsion surged through me. "You!" I said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, and I bolted down the slope, adrenaline fueling my movements. For the first time that trip, I snowboarded with purpose, my board slicing through the snow as I raced to the lodge. Inside, I called Amy, my voice trembling as I recounted the encounter. She met me at a table near the roaring fireplace, her face etched with concern. We texted the group chat, agreeing to cut the day short. By 3 p.m., we had returned our rental gear, Ubered back to the Airbnb, and tried to shake off the unease with showers and a trip to the village for dinner. That night, we drowned our nerves in cocktails at a local bar, the warmth of alcohol and laughter easing the tension. Back at the Airbnb, we piled into the hot tub, the steam rising into the starry sky as we sipped wine and swapped stories. It was well past midnight when we finally stumbled to our rooms, the house quiet save for the soft creak of the wooden floors. I was restless, my mind replaying the man's words as I scrolled through TikTok, the glow of my phone casting shadows on the walls. That's when I heard it, a faint but unmistakable sound of footsteps in the common area. At first, I dismissed it as one of the girls getting water or using the bathroom. But then came the soft rattle of my door's knob, twisting slowly as if testing the lock. My heart lurched. I froze, my phone forgotten, straining to hear over the pounding in my chest. The footsteps continued, deliberate and heavy, moving from one door to another. I grabbed my phone and texted the group chat, "Who's out there?" No response. They were likely asleep, blissfully unaware of the danger lurking in our sanctuary. I tiptoed to the door, pressing my ear against the cool wood. The footsteps paused, then resumed, circling the living room. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door with agonizing care, easing it open just enough to peek into the darkness. The living room was bathed in moonlight, the furniture casting long, eerie shadows. Then I saw him, a tall, dark silhouette moving with predatory grace, testing the handle of Angel's door. My breath caught in my throat. This was no mistake, no drunken guest stumbling into the wrong house. This was intentional. I closed the door silently, locking it with a soft click, and dialed 911. My voice barely a whisper as I explained the situation. The operator's calm instructions grounded me. Stay quiet, stay put. Help was on the way. But then came the knocks, light, almost playful taps on my door. The knob rattled again, more insistently this time. Panic clawed at me, and when the door began to shudder under the weight of someone pushing against it, I couldn't hold back. "Get out of here!" I screamed, my voice raw with fear. "I'm on the phone with 911. The banging stopped abruptly. A voice, low and chillingly familiar, murmured, "Okay, sweetheart." Footsteps retreated, fading into the night. I sank to the floor, clutching my phone as the operator assured me the police were close. My friends, awakened by my screams, texted frantically, and I urged them to stay locked in their rooms. When the police arrived, their flashlights cutting through the darkness, they found the front door ajar, the lock untouched. The intruder was gone, leaving only a trail of footprints in the snow that vanished into the trees. We spent the rest of the night huddled together, the police ensuring every window and door was secure. Sleep was impossible. The specter of that man, possibly the same one from the mountain, looming over us. The next day, we negotiated a partial refund with the Airbnb host, who seemed more annoyed than sympathetic. We abandoned plans to snowboard again, opting instead to explore the nearby towns, our eyes scanning every face for a hint of recognition. Sunday night, we checked into a motel, the sterile safety of its walls, a stark contrast to the Airbnb's exposed vulnerability. As we flew home, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something far worse than a bad vacation. Story 2: The Watcher in the Woods. The cabin stood alone in the shadow of Mount Bachelor, its weathered logs blending into the dense Oregon forest. It had been my father's pride, a retreat where he'd taught me to snowboard and where we'd spent countless winters carving memories into the snow. But after his suicide, the cabin became a painful reminder of loss. My mother, unable to afford its upkeep, had put it up for sale, and with less than a month before it went on the market, I saw my chance to say goodbye. I quit my job, packed my snowboarding gear, and loaded my dog, Midnight, into my dad's old Jeep. The drive to the cabin was a pilgrimage, a way to clear my head amidst the grief that clung to me like frost. The first 2 days were a balm for my soul. The cabin was just as I remembered, a cozy 2-story haven with a living room warmed by a stone fireplace, a small kitchen smelling faintly of pine, and a master bedroom with a walkout balcony overlooking the snow-laden trees. I spent my mornings playing with Midnight, his black fur dusted with snow as he bounded through drifts. Afternoons were for snowboarding, the slopes of Mount Bachelor offering a fleeting sense of freedom. Evenings I retreated to the cabin, sipping whiskey and playing PlayStation, the solitude a welcome respite from the chaos of the past months. But on the third day, the air shifted. A heavy snowfall blanketed the area, grounding me indoors. The cabin felt different, too quiet, as if holding its breath. Outside, the forest was a maze of towering pines, the only other cabins a block away, both empty and dark. I was alone, or so I thought. Around noon, while tossing a ball for Midnight in the driveway, I noticed footprints in the snow circling the cabin. They were fresh, the edges crisp despite the falling flakes, suggesting someone had been there within the hour. The tracks led away from the cabin, disappearing into the dense woods. I rationalized it, a hiker perhaps, or a neighbor I hadn't noticed. But the unease lingered, a cold weight in my chest. That night, as I lay in the master bedroom, Midnight's ears perked up, his body tense. He leapt off the bed and raced downstairs, his claws clicking on the hardwood. I held my breath, listening. The cabin was silent, but Midnight's pacing below told me something was wrong. After a few minutes, he returned, dancing anxiously, a sign he needed to go out. Reluctantly, I pulled on my boots and led him to the driveway. But instead of relieving himself, Midnight tugged at his leash, his gaze fixed on the dark woods where the footprints had vanished. He sniffed the side of the house, his head tilting upward toward the roof, a low growl rumbling in his throat. I yanked him back inside, my heart racing, and locked the door behind us. Back in bed, I tried to dismiss the incident, but sleep eluded me. Then I heard it. 6 heavy steps on the roof, deliberate and spaced like a man's stride. My blood ran cold. Midnight bolted to the balcony door, barking softly. I told myself it was a pine cone or an animal, but the weight of those steps suggested otherwise. Mustering my courage, I grabbed a flashlight, my coat, and a pack of cigarettes and stepped onto the balcony. The night was still, the snow undisturbed on the roof. I lit a cigarette, my breath clouding in the frigid air, and scanned the darkness. Nothing. I was almost convinced I'd imagined it when my eyes caught movement in a tree 20 feet away. There, crouched between 2 branches, was a figure. It was impossibly tall, 8 or 9 feet, its skeletal frame draped in pale, almost translucent skin. Its long, white arms stretched above its head, clutching the branch above, while its mouth hung open in a silent, expressionless gape. My cigarette fell from my fingers, sizzling in the snow. Midnight growled, his hackles raised, but the creature didn't move. It just stared, its presence a violation of everything natural. Fear paralyzed me, but a voice in my head, my father's, urged me not to engage. I backed into the room, pulling Midnight with me, and locked the door. I shone the flashlight toward the tree, but the figure was gone, as if it had never been. Hours later, as I lay awake, a soft tapping began at the balcony door, like fingers rapping on glass. It continued for nearly an hour, relentless and rhythmic. Midnight stared at the door but refused to approach, his body rigid. The tapping felt like an invitation, a lure to step into the unknown. But my father's voice echoed again, "Stay in bed, don't do it." I clung to those words, my only anchor in the suffocating fear. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted into a fitful sleep. Morning came, gray and oppressive. I packed my things with frantic urgency, Midnight's anxious pacing mirroring my own. As I loaded the Jeep, I checked the roof and the surrounding snow. The footprints from the day before were gone, buried under fresh powder, but the memory of that creature lingered. I drove away, the cabin shrinking in my rearview mirror, a place that had once held joy, now tainted by something I couldn't explain. My father's words rang true. It wasn't ghosts I should fear, but the living, or whatever that thing was, watching from the trees. Story 3. The hill that whispered our family's Vermont property was a winter sanctuary, perched atop a steep hill where the world seemed to pause. Surrounded by dense woods, the house was a 3-story marvel, its loft master bedroom a coveted retreat reserved for my parents. The nearest neighbors were a distant blur, their homes hidden by the curve of the road. A large shed stood at the edge of the property, housing snowboarding gear and lawn tools. Its lock a formality we ignored during our stays. This was where I brought Melissa, a friend eager to learn snowboarding, for a weekend of adventure. But the hill had other plans, its whispers growing into a scream we couldn't ignore. We arrived on a Friday, the air sharp with the promise of snow. The house welcomed us with the familiar scent of cedar and the crackle of a fire I built in the living room. Melissa was a novice, her enthusiasm outweighing her skill, so I decided to teach her on our custom slope, a steep, homemade run carved into the hill behind the house. We geared up, the shed's unlocked door swinging lazily in the breeze, and trudged to the top of the slope. I demonstrated the basics, gliding down with deliberate slowness, while Melissa followed, her first attempts ending in predictable tumbles. She laughed off each fall, her determination infectious, and with each run, she improved, her movements growing steadier. As we paused at the bottom of the hill, catching our breath, a voice pierced the silence. "Hello," it called, male and clear, from the woods to our left. We froze, scanning the trees, but saw only snow and shadows. The forest was a white expanse, its stillness mocking our confusion. "Is someone there?" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the vastness. No response. Melissa's eyes widened, her excitement replaced by unease. We abandoned the slope, retreating to the house, the voice lingering like a bad dream. I suggested it was a hiker, a harmless wanderer, but the explanation felt hollow. To shake off the incident, we drove to a nearby diner, its neon sign a beacon of normalcy. Over burgers and milkshakes, we laughed about the morning, convincing ourselves the voice was nothing. We stocked up on groceries, planning to spend the evening indoors, and returned to the house as dusk settled over the hill. After dinner, we lit the fire pit out back, the flames casting flickering shadows on the snow. The night was calm, the stars sharp against the black sky, until we heard it again. The unmistakable crunch of shoes in snow, close and deliberate. I killed the music, straining to hear over the fire's crackle. The footsteps stopped, leaving an oppressive silence. Grabbing Melissa's phone, I used both our flashlights to pierce the darkness, calling out, "Is someone there?" Melissa tugged at my arm, her voice trembling as she begged to go inside. We retreated, locking the door behind us, and spent the night on edge, the house's walls feeling thinner than ever. The next morning, I woke to find Melissa gone from our bed. Assuming she was downstairs, I rolled over, drifting back to sleep. When I woke again, it was 9 a.m., and she was still absent. I opened the curtains, my gaze falling on the shed. Its door was ajar, and a faint plume of breath curled from behind it, visible in the cold air. Thinking it was Melissa, I opened the window and called her name. Her voice answered, not from the shed, but from the living room inside. My skin prickled. I yelled again, this time at the shed. "Who's in there?" The breath vanished, and seconds later, a figure in black bolted from the shed, disappearing into the woods. I raced to the living room, finding Melissa frozen in front of the TV, her face pale. We checked the shed. Nothing was missing, but footprints traced a path from the woods to the shed and back again. I locked the shed, my hands shaking, and we tried to salvage the day with a trip to the mountain. Melissa, to her credit, picked up snowboarding quickly, her focus a welcome distraction. That night, we stayed indoors, cooking steak and watching a movie. The memory of the shed incident, a quiet specter between us. But at 2 a.m., Melissa woke me, her grip on my arm desperate. "Listen," she whispered. We sat in silence, the house creaking softly, until a voice, long and mournful, called from outside, "Help me." It was no cry for aid. It was a lure, deliberate and chilling. Melissa sobbed, clutching the blanket. Against her pleas, I peeked through the curtain, seeing only darkness. I cracked the window, the cold air stinging my face, and listened. Footsteps, fast and heavy, charged toward the window. I slammed it shut, locking it as a knock rattled the glass. Melissa whimpered, hiding under the covers. I whispered for her to stay silent, praying our silence would deter whoever or whatever was out there. The knocking stopped, the voice silent, but we didn't sleep. Dawn revealed the truth. Footprints encircled the house, a relentless path from window to window, as if someone had been searching for a way in. We packed in a frenzy, locked the shed, and fled. The hill's beauty now a facade hiding something sinister. Back in Rhode Island, I learned nothing had been stolen or damaged when my family returned to the property, but the knowledge offered no comfort. Someone had been watching us, stalking us from the moment we arrived, their intentions as opaque as the Vermont snow. The hill, once a place of joy, was now a reminder that isolation breeds vulnerability, and that the scariest thing is realizing you're not alone.